Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Large numbers are coming out to pay their respects to Queen Elizabeth, whose body's lying in state at Westminster Hall. The Canadian Tourism Commission allegedly gave themselves bonuses when the tourism sector was shut down during the pandemic. Franco Terrazzano from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation has the details. And Lethbridge police are warning about a blackmail scheme called Sextortion, which is targeting teenagers. We will explain.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Members of the public are lining up to pay their respects to Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen's casket was taken from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall, where it will lie in state until her funeral on Monday.
Like so many others, we've heard the superlatives of respect for the Queen, a life of dignity, duty, absolute devotion to her people, wherever they are. And that was certainly true in the South Pacific when I was a child. In 1963, I was a little girl in a school uniform in the tropical sun waving a flag. And so this is like the bookend of my experience of the Crown.
I'm prepared to wait as long as it takes. Hopefully it won't be too much longer, but yeah, it is what it is. I've wanted to be here since I heard the news. I've even left my newborn with my wife. She's not too keen on me being out too long, but she understands. I've got a lot of family that would love to be here, including from Canada, so I had to take the opportunity. I've known the Queen all my life, so for me I felt I had to come and pay my respects.
The Alberta government announced that it is renaming the federal building on the Legislature grounds in honour of the historic reign of Queen Elizabeth II. The facility hosts government staff and MLAs. The building, located on the northeast corner of the grounds, will officially be named the Queen Elizabeth II Building. A short ceremony will be taking place on September 27th to mark the occasion. Officials say permanent signage will be installed in the coming weeks. The first national gathering on unmarked burials took place in Edmonton this week. Indigenous community members, federal ministers, and those from the Catholic Church responded to the reports and discussed potential next steps.
I have certainly heard, of course, the pain and the harm that residential schools have caused to children, and fully acknowledge this truth. We've heard a number of perspectives on what justice would look like for missing and murdered children. I think it still remains one of the biggest questions out there. This could look like prosecution, conviction. It could look like restorative measures for communities. It could look like commemoration. One way or the other, we know that it needs to be Indigenous-led in terms of where we move from here.
There continues to be barriers in relation to access to records, and that's a big concern, not just with the federal government or the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation, but with provincial governments, municipal governments, and other entities such as universities that hold records. And so I would encourage all those institutions to actually look in their archives and do the work, so that and not sit back waiting for communities to say, can we get in there and look? Because we know that some of these institutions have records. They may not even know they have records.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre took another shot at Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, saying he's not doing enough to make life more affordable for Canadians. Poilievre says the Trudeau Liberals have to commit to not raising taxes, especially when inflation is so high.
To the Prime Minister and to his radical woke coalition with the NDP, here's my commitment. We as Conservatives are always happy to work with any party to collaborate and extend and advance the interests of Canadians. We are, but there will be no compromise on this point. Conservatives will not support any new tax increases, and we will fight tooth and nail to stop the coalition from introducing any.
Access to information documents obtained by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation show that executives at the Canadian Tourism Commission allegedly paid themselves 5-figure quarantine bonuses even as tourism in our country collapsed. Now, to talk about this in more detail is the federal director of the CTF, Franco Terrazzano, who joins us now from Calgary. Franco, your group was the first to break the story. You say that federal employees with Destination Canada not only receive bonuses, but also pay raises at the same time the industry it's supposed to promote was shut down?
Yeah, can you believe it? Imagine being a restaurant owner, or imagine being the server who worked in the restaurant when they were locked down, when they lost their job, when they lost their business, to know that their tax dollars were funding the Crown Corporation's bonuses. And remember, this is a Crown Corporation that is supposed to be promoting the tourism industry. So this must have just felt like an absolute slap in the face. I mean, the Crown Corporation should not be giving itself bonuses when the industry is supposed to be marketing was shut down, which was locked down. I'm pretty sure there weren't that many servers who were getting bonuses when their restaurants were locked down.
Now, the bonuses and raises allegedly occurred during the height of the pandemic in both 2020 and 2021. What kind of money are we talking about here?
It's absolutely eye-popping, especially the bonuses that the executives gave themselves. In 2020, the bonuses worked out to about $32,000 on average for each executive. In 2021, the bonuses still worked out to about $16,000 on average for each executive, but many employees got a bonus. The bonuses cost about $1.2 million in total, but then there was also pay raises on top of that in 2020 and 2021. And guess what? No pay cuts.
Now, Franco, you say it appears as though Destination Canada wasn't the only Crown Corporation that doled out bonuses and raises during the pandemic.
This shows that we have seen a tale of two pandemics, one full of private sector pain for the many workers who are working for a business who may have lost their job or took a pay cut, or for many of the small business owners who may have lost their business. But then the other part was actually full of economic gain for many bureaucrats, many politicians. Remember, this isn't the only Crown Corporation that was giving itself bonuses while their neighbors in the private sector struggled. The Bank of Canada handed out $45 million in pay raises and bonuses during the pandemic. You have the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation handed out nearly $60 million in pay raises and bonuses during the pandemic. And the CBC, it handed out $51 million in pay raises and bonuses while so many people struggled through the pandemic and lockdowns.
Thanks so much, Franco. That was Franco Terrazzano, Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, joining us from Calgary. Well, we had lots of cloud cover again today and not a lot of moisture. Angela Stewart is out at Fort Whoop up in Lethbridge and has an early peek at the forecast. Angela, the threat of heavy rain has moved on as we move closer to the weekend.
Yes, that's right, Hal. There is a 30% chance of rain tonight. There's also a risk of a thunderstorm with a low near 7, but we will also be getting some of that sunshine back this weekend. As for how the weekend is looking and how the rest of the week is shaping up, I'll have all those details coming up later in the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Angela. A drug treatment court that began in November of 2020 is having a big impact here in Lethbridge. The court was the topic of discussion during a SACPA session at the Lethbridge Senior Citizens Organization on Thursday. Chelsea DeGroot, the regional director for the Lethbridge Drug Treatment Court program, says the initiative has been successful so far, with one graduate who completed the 12 to 16-month program. DeGroot outlines exactly what the Drug Treatment Court does here in our city.
The Lethbridge Drug Treatment Court is for offenders who have committed crimes due to their drug habits. And so usually that's trafficking drugs and or committing crimes to feed their drug addiction. We do not take commercial dealers that are looking at, gaining financial means from that, from their trafficking. And so it's for offenders who are looking at 1 to 5 years of custody. And so this is kind of a way to keep them in community and rehabilitate them and not sending them to jail.
There are currently 7 people enrolled in the program. Now, in order for a drug treatment court application to be approved, the person has to first plead guilty to any charges they are facing. The Lethbridge Police Service has a warning to not fall victim to sextortion. It's a form of blackmail where young people are being targeted, and 91% are male. As Angela Stewart reports now, the Lethbridge school divisions are taking action to spread awareness of the danger as an increase in cases are being reported to police.
What we've seen over the past year is a huge increase in receiving these reports.
It's a concerning trend in our city where youth are becoming victims to sextortion.
It could happen to anyone. Our youth are specifically exploited because the increased relationships online that are occurring with people they haven't met before.
Sextortion, which is also a form of blackmail, is when a predator online threatens to send sexually explicit pictures or videos of the victim if they are not paid money
or given more sexual content.
So what we're seeing with kids is a lot more time on Instagram and Snapchat. And through that, there's increased ability for them to be exploited.
LPS say this year they have received 43 reports of blackmail and extortion, which doubled from the previous year.
That's one thing that we're working with our school divisions is how can we incorporate digital citizenship, online safety presentations.
We do have a digital citizenship scope and sequence kind of a curriculum that is available for students to learn through their teachers.
The Holy Spirit Catholic School Division says in part with supporting their students, they offer a user agreement, which ultimately opens up the conversation of safe technology use.
You know, it encourages parents to monitor what their children are doing. Social media and apps and all these things are not going away. It's very much a part of what students and all of us are engaged in.
The Lethbridge School Division echoing that sentiment. In a statement, they say teaching students how to responsibly and safely use technology is a shared responsibility. Reading in part, the division will continue to provide educational and skill-building opportunities to support students and families. LPS say of the 43 reports filed to them, they have not resulted in any charges to date. They're also encouraging parents to have those important conversations with their kids about the potential risks of sextortion. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Give what you can and take what you need. Now that's the motto for the new Little Free Pantry that's been set up in Coaldale. The idea was started by volunteers in the community called the Youth Do Crew. The pantry is full of food and supplies for those who have need. Video journalist Micah Quinn has more now on the popular little pantries that have been popping up all across southern Alberta.
Back in April, the Youth Do Crew presented to Coaldale Town Council to put out the idea of installing a little free pantry in the town. Coaldale Mayor Jack Van Ryan was sold on the idea after 5 minutes of listening to the group.
We are living in uncertain times right now, and even town of Coaldale, we have residents that have hard times right now with inflation and for whatever reason. This is another tool in the toolbox where they have an opportunity to come and either support the pantry or utilize the pantry.
The Do Crew received a grant from the Coaldale Community Wellness Association, which helped pay for the materials for the construction of the pantry, as well as food and supplies. Jillian Boyd, the Youth Do Crew coordinator for the Coaldale Family and Community Support Services, says this is a wonderful initiative that is judgment-free.
We've already had donations come today. When we were actually setting up the pantry earlier, a mother and her son came by and they brought us a bunch of dried pasta and other noodles and some canned soup and some canned beans. So it's already gaining traction, which is awesome.
Abby Chiquetta, a volunteer with the Do Crew, says it can be tough for some people to access the food bank, and a little free pantry is right at your fingertips.
If you're just, having a hard week or something, or, something just doesn't get through, you can always get something small if you need it. And it's really nice because it's also just as easy to put food there once you get back on your feet, or if anybody else just has something extra that they want to place.
The grant allocated $1,200 for the Little Free Pantry, which is now located right next to the Family and Community Support Services building in Coaldale. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
What a great idea to help provide for those in need. A new report by the AMA says Alberta food banks are experiencing record demand. The study found that over 116,000 Albertans visit a food bank each and every month, with 38% being children. The national average is 33%. Now, according to another report from the University of Toronto, more than 20% of Albertans experience food insecurity. Many Albertans are having a tough time putting food on the table right now. The report says that's the highest percentage out of all of the provinces in Canada. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says the number of birds infected with avian flu is growing, and Alberta has the highest number of cases of the disease. The organization released an update on confirmed cases of H5N1 on poultry farms. It says over 1 million birds have been euthanized so far in Alberta. That is about more than double the amount of birds affected in Ontario. The federal and Saskatchewan governments have announced $5.4 million in funding to provide up to a $2 an hour wage increase for early childhood educators. Saskatchewan's Education Minister Dustin Duncan says the investment helps the hard work these professionals do every day while encouraging new workers in the field. Federal Minister of Families, Children and Social Development Karina Gould says it's a meaningful step toward ensuring educators' work is valued throughout their lifelong careers. Manitoba's post-secondary schools have decided to close on Monday for the National Day of Mourning to honor Queen Elizabeth II. All classes will be cancelled at both colleges and universities. Flags on school campuses and other institutions across the province will remain at half-mast until sunset. Manitoba government offices providing non-essential services will also be closed. The Day of Mourning, however, is not considered a general statutory holiday. Members of Ontario's legislature paid tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth. Ontario Premier Doug Ford said the late Queen served as a constant presence during turbulent times. He says she will be remembered for the comfort she brought many people.
Queen Elizabeth served as Queen of Canada in the Commonwealth from 1952 to 2022. For many people, myself included, we have never lived in a world without Queen Elizabeth. She spent countless hours working to improve the lives of people everywhere. I count myself as one of those people who will miss her dearly. So, while we are saddened by her passing, as each of us feel her loss deeply, let us reflect on the mark she has left and how fortunate we have been to live in the time of Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah, I still remember singing God Save the Queen in elementary school. Well, we had sunshine mixed with cloud today, and the special air quality statement from Environment Canada ended. Some cooler temperatures are on the way for much of southwestern Alberta. Full weather details are coming up. Well, it's not as smoky or hazy today in Lethbridge. The air quality statement from Environment Canada finally ended. Angela Stewart is out at Fort Whoop Up with a full look at the weather picture. Angela, the dog days of summer have gone with the temperature falling back a few degrees.
Yes, that's very true, Hal. The nice warm 30-degree weather that we experienced over the summer is behind us. Soon those cooler temperatures are going to start setting in, with even the leaves starting to change. Probably a good time to break out those warmer clothes. Tonight, a 30% chance of rain with even a risk of a thunderstorm with a low near 7. For Friday, a mix of sun and cloud, some cloudy skies expected for the morning, but the high expected to be around 22 degrees for the day. Saturday, a great day to get out and enjoy some of that sunshine, 21 for the high and sunny conditions. Sunday, a high of 18 degrees and a mix of sun and cloud. To start the work week off, gloomy conditions. Make sure you have that umbrella handy, a chance of rain, and 18 degrees. Tuesday, same deal, 10 degrees for the high and a 60% chance of rain. Wednesday, better conditions, a mix of sun and cloud, and 15 for the high. Looking at the almanac now, the average high for this time of year is 20 degrees. The average low is 5 degrees. The record high was 31 degrees set back in 1979, and the record low was -2 set back in 1965. The sun rose at 7:07 and set at 7:46 p.m. Looking at some temperatures and conditions across the country now for Friday. Victoria, a high of 17 degrees and a chance of rain, about a 60% chance of it. So make sure you have those rain boots and coat handy. Same picture in Vancouver, a few showers in the morning, but ending near noon, and a high of 17 for Friday. Kicking off the weekend in Calgary for tomorrow, mainly sunny and 21 degrees for the high, a mix of sun and cloud, and 20 degrees in Edmonton. In Regina, cloudy with a southeast wind at 20 kilometers an hour, reaching about 18 degrees for the high there. Saskatoon, similar conditions, cloudy and 19 degrees. There's a 60% chance of rain in Winnipeg, reaching about 13 degrees for the high there on Friday. Shaping up nicely in Toronto, 24 degrees and a mix of sun and cloud. Ottawa, 18 degrees and a 30% chance of the wet stuff. Montreal, 19 degrees and sunny. Fredericton reaching about only 15 for the day, mainly sunny conditions. In Halifax, sunny and 16 degrees. Mainly cloudy in Charlottetown, wind heading northwest at about 30 kilometers, gusting to about 60. Also expect only a high of 14 there. A 40% chance of rain in St. John's, about 2 millimeters expected, and 16 degrees for the high. And Hal, that's a look at the forecast from Fort Whoop Up here in Lethbridge.
Ford has unveiled its new Mustang at the opening of the Detroit Auto Show. The company says it might be the last gas-powered version of the iconic muscle car. The 7th generation S650 Mustang Dark Horse is pure muscle. It's a new 5-liter V8 engine pushing close to 500 horsepower. The Dark Horse is the first special edition Mustang since the Bullet, which was debuted back in 2001. The Dark Horse's potent V8 engine is mated to either a 10-speed automatic or a 6-speed manual transmission. It's a nice-looking car. Air Canada's inked a deal with a Swedish company to buy 30 electric hybrid aircraft currently under development. Air Canada's also acquired a $5 million U.S. equity stake in Heart Aerospace. Heart's ES-30 regional aircraft will be able to carry 30 passengers. They're expected to be in service by the year 2028. Air Canada says the planes will be powered by lithium-ion batteries and equipped with reserve hybrid generators that can use sustainable aviation fuel. It appears as though a number of Medicine-Hat business owners were able to survive during the COVID-19 pandemic. Lisa Kowalchuk is the executive director of the Medicine-Hat District Chamber of Commerce. And she says a big reason why was the entrepreneurial spirit of so many business owners in southeastern Alberta.
Despite some of the challenges, we still saw a number of business start up during a very difficult time, taking that risk and that challenge and, surviving through and becoming very successful. So it's really neat to see, again, the strength and resiliency of our business community and those connections and the deeper connections, I think, that have been formed and continue to grow within our community. So it's a really strong presence of our entrepreneurs and that entrepreneurial mindset that we have, in particular, I think, across Alberta, and we see it in southern Alberta in particular, the willingness to take risks, and certainly even those that have expanded their businesses.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Lisa Kowalchuk from the Medicine-Hat District Chamber of Commerce and BCM producer Michael Clausen coming up after business news. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 165 on the day to finish at 19,560. The Dow was down 173 points to 30,961. The S&P 500 was down 44 on the day to 3901, and the Nasdaq was down 167 to 11,552. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $3.44 to $85.04 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 82 cents to $8.29 US. Gold was down 34 cents to $16.6477 US an ounce, and silver was even on the day at $19.18 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.02 per bushel, barley's at $8.60, canola's at $17.91, and corn is at $11.55 per bushel. Live cattle were up $1.28 to $145.63. Feeder cattle were down 50 cents to $180.93, and lean hogs were up $1.35 to $96.05. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 75.60 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Lethbridge police are warning about a blackmail scam targeting young people called sextortion. It's when a predator befriends someone online, convinces that young person to send a sexually explicit photo, then threatens to make the photo go viral unless the young person sends money and/or pictures. Police say there have been 43 sextortion files reported to them, with 91% of the victims being male. Police say you can contact them directly if you've been a victim, or you can also report the incident online through cybertip.ca. Many businesses in Medicine-Hat, Alberta survived the COVID-19 pandemic. Coming up, we'll chat with the executive director of the Medicine-Hat District Chamber of Commerce to find out what made so many of these entrepreneurs successful. And listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Come for a great family-friendly outing to Coulee Fest, taking place Saturday, September 17th at Lethbridge College. Take a tour of the campus. Enjoy live music and your choice of food from 16 food trucks, a kids' carnival, and cheer on your favorite local team mascot in a race. Plus, discover some unique pieces at the Prairie Maid Market. There you'll find clothing and accessories, home decor, art, and much more. Admission is free. For more information, visit couleefest.ca. Gather your family and friends for a beautiful evening and support a worthy cause. On Saturday, October 15th, the Covenant Foundation in Lethbridge is holding their Harvest Moon Ball at the Sandman Signature Lethbridge Lodge. Enjoy an elegant meal, exciting silent and live auctions, and a live musical performance by the Chevelles. Funds raised will go to support the greatest needs at Covenant Health's St. Michael's Health Center and St. Therese Villa. For tickets, visit covenantfoundation.ca/Harvest Moon Ball. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Medicine Hat is one of the sunniest spots in Canada. The Gas City is a popular destination for families with young children and retirees alike. Business and community in the southeast part of our province is strong and growing. And to talk more about the potential of Medicine Hat, here is Lisa Kowalchuk, the Executive Director of the Medicine Hat Chamber of Commerce. Lisa, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Michael.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. Now, as we have a few months left in 2022, what are some of the wins for businesses in the Hat this year?
I think so many of our communities can probably say the same, just in terms of the resiliency of our businesses and making it through kind of the global pandemic and the different innovations that we saw with our businesses, from different workforce strategies to, so many of our businesses, particularly our restaurants, putting out patios so that they could serve their businesses, and seeing those continue beyond and being able to create spaces and experiences for their patrons and for our community. I think, another win and success within our community is, despite some of the challenges, we still saw a number of business start up during a very difficult time, taking that risk and that challenge and, surviving through and becoming very successful. So it's really neat to see, again, the strength and resiliency of our business community and those connections and the deeper connections, I think, that have been formed and continue to grow within our community. So it's a really strong presence of our entrepreneurs and that entrepreneurial mindset that we have, in particular, I think, across Alberta, and we see it in Southern Alberta in particular, the willingness to take risks, and certainly even those that have expanded their businesses.
Yes. Yeah, it is great to see, especially the collaboration between businesses. I know my friend Ryan, who's a carpenter in Medicine Hat, he built the outdoor staging, as it were, for the Mad Hatter. And of course, the local's always a great spot to spend the summer outside while visiting with friends. So that is great to see. How about some of the challenges for 2022?
Yeah, I think, again, this is probably, reflected in a lot of communities, but it has been increasingly difficult for business because of that accelerating pace of change and constant change that they're having to adapt to. You put in a global pandemic and the economic, fiscal, regulatory environment that they're having to deal with, even in terms of the technological shift. So obviously that was accelerated in the last 2 years out of necessity. But, a decade ago, smartphones really didn't exist. 3 decades ago, no one really owned a computer when you look back in time, in terms of households. And we have demographic changes that are impacting us, workforce and workplace trends that are becoming redefined with automation and remote work and new forms of work in the gig economy. Technology obviously is accelerating at an exponential pace, and there's more cybersecurity needed and more challenges and big data and AI and blockchain. So, you look at all of those things, and I always say, we're very fortunate that we have different skills, expertise, and resources as a chamber that we can tap into. But, businesses really need to be connected, resilient, and resourceful, because there are so many different things that are impacting their business and constant changes in political trends and just the global economy overall. So I think the only thing certain is change. And as a chamber, we know we need to be responsive and willing to be able to assist our businesses, recognize and adapt to that evolving landscape. and certainly still recognizing the challenges of our business, that they're just trying to run their day-to-day operations. And so trying to keep up with all of that is very difficult. And I think out of all of that, one of the biggest challenges that we've seen, and I think we see it across the board, is certainly the labor force and workforce and the demand for labor. So that is something we've really honed in on.
Now, how about the provincial government? This year, have they taken maybe more of an active role in helping local businesses recover from the pandemic?
Yeah, I think certainly we've seen it across the board in terms of the different incentives that have been provided and different opportunities. So things like the Jobs Now program, or the Canada Alberta Summer Job Program, in addition to some of the federal response. On a local level, we had a number of incentives that had been introduced as well on a local level, which we didn't see in a lot of other municipalities. And some of those incentives are ongoing or continuing to evolve, because we also recognize that, despite what has happened in the last couple of years, we have economic recovery ahead of us. And so how do we continue to recognize the challenges of the businesses, but ensure that we're continuing to evolve, adapt, innovate to recover and grow and thrive as we move forward.
Right. Now, how about the city council and the new mayor? Like, I was thinking of Jim Turner, the late Jim Turner, as you were chatting, and he was such a delightful fellow. City council is a little bit different. We have a new mayor in Medicine Hat. Can you talk about the relationship, or maybe what they've done for the community, or the business community, I should say?
Yeah, I think we've always had a really good relationship with our city councils, and have always had that open dialogue, which certainly we see benefit, because they joke every once in a while that we're the official opposition, but really we say we're just there to help improve the environment, and just make note or make point of the things that we can just do a little bit better. And certainly with a change in council comes that that establishment of a new era and communication, and looking at how we can align strategic plans and priorities moving forward. The City Council recently adopted a new strategic plan. And so within that, we've certainly taken a look and made some points of the areas that we can really hone in on, look to kind of capitalize on. So in terms of innovation, there is a willingness to pursue opportunities and remove obstacles to success and innovation, and looking at development. There is a desire. The second strategy is the economic evolution. So we always like to see when the economy is a priority, and looking at how we encourage a strong and diversified regional economy, as well as encouraging entrepreneurship. There's a goal for service orientation. So as we all know, we need our municipalities to be easy to deal with from a business perspective. They are looking at partnerships and governance, and we hope to play a fairly prominent role in those partnerships in terms of how we can ensure that there is resources for our business community and those connections, and that we're able to provide insight into ways that we can adapt and grow community wellness, resilience, and sustainability. So we have had conversations with council. We actually have a meeting coming up here with our council at the end of the month, and we continually seek out those opportunities where we can kind of reflect and communicate and ensure that we're constantly moving forward. So we did a presentation to City Council. This is a follow-up to that, and we regularly have those meetings to discuss how we move plans forward. So not just talk for the sake of talk, but actually see those action plans.
Right, and that's great. That is one of the things that I've always liked about the Medicine Hat Chamber of Commerce and the Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce as well, is how active a role the Chamber takes in advocating for business and business ideas. One of the things that I like that the Medicine Hat Chamber does is the Brown Bag Series. Can you talk a little bit about how those new businesses, or maybe they're entrenched businesses, but they kind of need a new strategy or something? Can you talk a little bit about the Brown Bag Series?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that was a new initiative that we did start in 2022. and has been going really well. And it was, again, out of a recognized need that businesses don't necessarily have all the tools in their toolkit to succeed and to thrive and to grow. And so we wanted to launch the series as a way to give them some of those additional resources and to provide a bit of training from professionals within our community. So that business to business connection. So if they have questions, they don't have to call somebody outside of our community for that professional advice. These are professionals right within our community that are here to support the businesses. And so it's really walking them through. I always say businesses know their trade. They're really good at what they do, which is typically why they start a business, because they're passionate about that particular industry or trade or skill set that they have. But they haven't necessarily been given the skills to run a business. So you have to deal often with HR and finance and cash flow and dealing with, the different regulatory environments and cybersecurity and websites and communication and social media and all of that. And it gets really overwhelming. So what we really try to do is break that down, simplify it into topical sessions that businesses can attend at no charge.
That's great. Now, I know Medicine Hat has a lot of opportunity, I think, for new and established businesses. Certainly the weather is great, but can you talk a little bit about how the Chamber and Invest Medicine Hat and even like Tracy Stroud and Apex work together to help businesses?
Yeah, I think a really good example is actually the Connector platform. So if you go to the Apex Alberta website, there's actually an online platform that again, an evolution through this global pandemic where you can enter a virtual building and go into different rooms and see some of the different supports. So it is a collaborative environment where all of those business supports are represented, not only in Medicine Hat, but in the region. And so it's this online platform. So it's intended even for businesses. So perhaps they don't have the time or they can't connect during business hours, or they're looking at Medicine Hat as a place to come or to invest. They have this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week service that they can go in and find some of those resources. So that's a good example of the collaboration. Another one that had been done by all the parties, all the business support providers within our region was the Invest Southeast Alberta initiative. And so that really kicked off in about 2019, and it was to look at business retention, expansion, and workforce development. And of course, we had this lovely little global situation occur in a couple of years. And so there has still been a lot of work done as a result of that. Another one of the initiatives that came out of that whole collaboration was the move to Medicine Hat website. So with Tourism Medicine Hat and Community Futures Entrecourt, they have developed a beautiful website that talks about, if you want to come to live, work, or play in Medicine Hat and the resources. And then you couple that with resources that we've built on our website. So we have a whole business resource page, but we also developed a business support toolkit that has all of the resources from the different partners included and who you can connect with for business supports. That's great. Now, we talked a little bit earlier, just briefly, about kind of a labor shortage. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe the new building permits and house sales? How have they been this year in Medicine Hat? Yeah, so when I was looking at the stats, certainly the building permit values have increased. The annual change, when I looked at statistically, by 53, just about 54%. And then in terms of the number of permits, we're kind of flat in terms of where we've been at. And then in terms of the stats on house sales, I actually had reached out to the Medicine Hat Real Estate Board, and they would be a phenomenal resource to connect specifically on that. But certainly for housing starts, again, we haven't seen huge growth, but still relatively stable, which is always good to see. We certainly don't want to see the declines. We want to see it growing. And I think too, when you look at what has occurred in the last couple of years, that certainly makes sense too. But the housing market, just anecdotally, is still really strong. Houses are not staying on the market all that long. That's great. I was chatting last night with one of my high school friends who is a real estate sales member. And he was actually telling me that his office gets a lot of calls from Canadians in Manitoba and Ontario about moving to Medicine Hat.
can you share with us a few things that attracts those young families to the area?
Well, I think it's, the quality of life. When you look at the pace of life and the cost of living, I mean, it certainly has been top of mind in terms of affordability across our country. And so I think more and more people are looking at just the cost of living and affordability, and Medicine Hat provides that in terms of the housing market, residential tax rates, an accessible, walkable community. So I think that's very attractive to a lot of people, and they're looking to escape kind of the busyness of the larger centers and looking to mid-sized centers like ours, where you still have all of the amenities and you still have opportunities. But it's not quite this, it's not an hour commute to work. You can get anywhere in the city in, 15 minutes. And so I think that's very attractive. It's a safe community. So, when people are looking at raising a young family, it's certainly a place you want to go, certainly a place that I've invested in personally, and why I call Medicine Hat home.
Yeah, there's so many great neighborhoods too in Medicine Hat. And I have probably another 27 questions I could ask you, but we're out of time, unfortunately. So thank you very much for joining us today. It was great to hear about Medicine Hat and all the potential for the future.
Well, and if people want to know more, they can come onto our website, medicinehatchamber.com, or give us a call. We always love talking about Medicine Hat. So, and the Southern Alberta region. I think we have a great region here within the province.
Parenting is a tough job at the best of times. It can often be even more challenging once our kids become teenagers. Today's guest uses humor to help parents in raising their kids. Ken Swarner is author of the book, Why Did God Give My Kids Free Will? He could have waited until they moved out. Ken joins us now from just outside of Seattle, Washington. Ken, welcome to Bridge City News.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
By the way, that's a great title for a book. How did you come up with the title, and what inspired you to write it?
Well, so I've been parenting continuously for 30 years. My youngest just graduated this year from high school. And so, the transition for me from who I was when my first was born to developing my relationship stronger with God, to I get to the finish line, at least with kids living at home, I learned a few things in that time. And one thing was that God loved my kids so much, he gave them free will. And that really became a cornerstone for me to understand this relationship, that it's my kids' free will, not my will.
Now, our children were given free will by God, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we should stand by and let them throw eggs and tomatoes at the neighbor's house. Might you make a nice omelet by doing that? So how do we find the right balance in this?
I think it's about holding our kids accountable, but also understanding that if they don't go through those processes, how do they learn to be great adults and great Christians? So that free will part is where I believe God's giving them the opportunity to try some things out. Maybe they don't all go well, and then learn through the consequences of those actions, so that when they become adults, they're way better prepared for what life is going to throw at them.
I'm a parent myself. My kids are now in their mid-20s. It surprises me how quickly the time flies by when you're raising your children. But as parents, we also always want to offer a healthy structure, but we want to make sure that we're not too controlling or smothering our children. So how do we go about doing that, in your opinion?
Yeah, control is a huge issue. It's one of the biggest ones, is learning to give that, or remember that the person in control is God, right? Not me. And that he's guiding them. My job is to model good Christian behavior, good adult behavior, to be a loving father, to love them unconditionally. And remember that they're watching. What I say has no bearance. What it really comes down to is what I do.
So, and incorporating humor, I guess, is vital in raising our kids. Learn to laugh at ourselves as we're laughing at the kids, as we're all laughing together, right?
Yeah, and teaching them to laugh at themselves. to understand that life is a series of trying things out, for finding our place in the world, and understanding not to take everything so seriously. And so the more they can laugh at themselves, the less they fall into those traps of shame or humiliation. It's about humility and obedience to God. But I think God gave us humor for a reason, and I want them to embrace that.
It's good to embrace that and laugh at certain situations, certain scenarios. But Ken, what happens if you see your child going down the wrong path, a path that maybe you went down when you were a child and it ended in destruction? It didn't end positively. And you're like, I don't want you going down that path. But as a parent, you have to be hands off, say they have to learn on their own and they have to experience things on their own.
Well, I think they have to accept the consequences. But what I found was the more honest I am with them about all the things when I missed the mark, and how I learned from that and what I did to rectify, apologize, whatever the process was, for them to see that, Dad's been down this road too, and here's how he handled it. And let me tell you, kids love to hear stories about Dad making mistakes. Oh, yeah. They really stop and pay attention.
Yeah, I tell my kids some of the mistakes I made in college. Now I turned things around and then, graduated, with really good marks, but it didn't start off that way. And so they're like, you know what? I don't want to make that mistake, Dad. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. So, Ken, it appears as though fathers may have a lot of influence in their children's lives, especially when it comes to spirituality. Now, you mentioned a study that revealed that when mom goes to church regularly, but dad only attends every so often, only 3.4% of kids in that environment will actually become regular churchgoers. But if dad goes to church all the time and mom never goes, 44% of kids will grow up to become regular churchgoers. Why do you think that is?
I think going to church requires, a certain amount of humbleness and softness and obedience. And, everybody expects mom, to be more faithful in getting to church and keeping the house clean and keeping us all from killing ourselves. And so they become a little bit like white noise, right, for the kid. But when dad does it, it's like, whoa, look what dad just did. They really take notice of that. And I just believe it stops them in their tracks, and they give it more time to think about than if mom just does it.
Maybe the kids are thinking there's a lot of credibility with this because dad's making the time as well. So mom and dad may be together in unison, going to church and worshiping and praising and having that structure for the kids is very positive. Ken, I sometimes hear moms complaining that they may end up doing most of the bedtime prayers and the Bible reading with the kids and Bible studies. Any thoughts on why a lot of dads don't do this, take that initiative?
Yeah, I think dads are so focused often on the outside, right? What dangers lurk out there, or we're just trying to push the family forward, leading from the tip of the spear. And we forget sometimes that how important what's going on inside the home is equally important. And it's about just humbling ourselves and showing the children, that it's so important that dad is there too. And it really backs mom up too, right? Because mom shouldn't have to shoulder that all on her own.
Let's talk a bit about the bond that fathers will have with their children and how important it is spending quality time with them. I'm thinking of the Harry Chapin song, The Cat's in the Cradle,
Yeah, I grew up with that too. And I remember really reflecting on that. I think I'm part of that generation that really made the big shift for spending way more time with our kids. And I get it. I mean, if you weren't raised that way, my dad did a pretty good job, but he was gone a lot working and whatnot. I can't imagine not having those relationships with my kids, but more importantly, I'm going to know these people a lot longer as adults than I will ever know them as children. And so the time I spent with them with kids is really just laying the groundwork for how we'll have adult relationships. If I didn't do that with my kids, it'd be so much harder for them to trust me and want to be a part of my life as adults. So it really pays off for the other 60 years, I'll know them after they're kids.
Ken, with a high cost of living and inflation right now, a lot of young people are struggling, and even as adults in their early to mid-20s, some of them have to move back home again. How is that dynamic different from when they were little, when they're moving back in with their parents?
Well, luckily, I haven't experienced that. Although I do have a 19-year-old that I'm trying to move up, into adulthood and out of the house. But I do find, though, that I have grandkids that live just around the corner from me, and it's about wanting to have relationships with those kids, but not wanting to be those kids' parents, right? They have parents, that's their job. My job as a grandpa is really awesome because I just get to love them unconditionally and be that one person in the world that no matter what happens, they can just come to me and feel loved. And I think that's awesome. And I think for families that have kids moving back, I think that's important to remember, your role. You don't have to take parenting back on again.
Are you one of those grandfathers that loads your grandkids up on sugar, gets them all hyper, and then sends them home?
Oh, it's the best part, right? You just get to be, yeah. As a father, I was so focused on parenting, and as grandparents, it's just great. I can just sit there on the floor and listen to their stories, and I love it.
Ken, we can sometimes become pretty judgmental of our children and even judgmental of other parents. Is that an unhealthy behavior?
Yeah, I think, deep down judgment is always about judging ourselves, right? It's so easy to see other parents and what they're doing and to start pointing a finger at what they're doing. But usually the things that bother us in other people are really the things that bother us about ourselves. And the minute I really started understanding that process, I found myself to be a lot less judgmental and way more supportive of other folks. I also found it really important to find some other parents that I didn't have to feel judged. We share all of our trials and tribulations with kids, and that camaraderie was super, super helpful.
So any suggestions on what works best to influence your children to do what's right?
Yeah, there's a lot of studies that have been done that show that a parent's influence is really pretty small in a kid's life, where outside influences, genetics, those things play a much bigger role. And so for me, it was learning to model. They're watching what I do, not what I say. In fact, when I start lecturing, they're out, their eyes glaze over, they're not listening. But they are always seeing how I respond, what I talk about, who I judge, all of those things. Do I go to church? Those are the important aspects. So just model good behavior and your kids will follow.
Parents are human beings, and sometimes they'll get into a squabble with each other. They'll get into a fight in front of the children. They'll be yelling at each other. So what advice do you give to mom and dad to avoid setting a bad example in that regard?
Always be a united force. If you're going to squabble or disagree, do it in private. I think the biggest compliment we got was when my oldest was a teenager, and he came and he told his mom that they got into some kind of discussion about going behind her back to talk to me. And my son said, that's worthless. You guys are always on the same sheet of music. And I loved hearing that, because that's exactly what kids need to. Kids feel safer when the rules are consistent, right? So if they're playing one parent off of the other, they actually are feeling really unsafe about that. They want a united force. Not that they won't keep trying, but really, when you boil it down to it, they feel safer and more loved when the parents are on the same sheet of music.
Yeah, being on the same page is vital, absolutely. Showing that united front together as a family. Ken, the teenage years can be quite a challenge. I remember myself when I was a teenager being kind of a tyrant to my parents, and then my kids as they became teenagers, some of the challenges we had. What are some of the do's and don'ts for parents, especially when it comes to disciplining our children?
Yeah, again, remembering that you're raising adults, not children, is super important, because when you understand that, then you realize that the consequences that you give are so important, right? I think sometimes we're so afraid that our child's not gonna like us, or what are people gonna say when they hear your child got in trouble? But those things you want to kind of put aside. What you really want is your child to learn from experiences, accept the accountability, figure their way, what do they need to do to get out of that situation, make up for it, or whatever, apologize, all those things. It's so important to hold them accountable. And it's really hard sometimes because my 19-year-old came to me the other day to show me his broken cell phone. Now that's like losing a limb for a teenager, right? And I knew what he was saying. He's showing me this phone because he wants me to buy him a new one. And he just got all this graduation money that he blew through in just like 1 week. And I wanted to get him a new phone so badly because I hated seeing the panic in his eyes that his phone was dead, but I didn't. I said, hey, I feel confident in you that you'll raise that money in a job in no time. And he's still not really talking to me yet, but he knows he's got to do this, and he's capable to figure this out. So anyway, that's the part. Hold them accountable, let them fail, and they will surprise you.
Ken, there's often a gray area too. We talk about being your children's friend, but at the same time being their parent to be able to offer the structure and potential discipline down the road, but just to help mentor, teach, and coach them. That's kind of a gray area. So when do you go from being the friend back to the parent and then back again to being a friend?
Yeah, even with my adult kids, I never think of myself as their friend. I'm always their dad. Now, granted, I don't have to worry if they're cleaning their room or can make their rent payment or any of those. Those are great pressures to get off my shoulders. They're adults, they know what to do. And I love that part. So we do get to spend more time like friends. But at the end of the day, I'm their dad. And I want them to know that regardless of what happens in their life, there is one person in this world who will love them unconditionally, and we all need that. We need that somebody in our lives who we can just go to and share our feelings and not be lectured to. And that's what I want to be.
Ken Swarner is the author of Why Did God Give My Kids Free Will? He could have waited until they moved out. Thanks so much for joining us today from just outside of Seattle, Washington.
Thank you so much.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.